Have you ever walked out of a conversation, gotten into your car, and started the whole thing over again in your head before you even turned the key? Not the entire conversation, just one part of it. One sentence you said that landed slightly wrong. A pause that lasted half a second too long. A joke nobody laughed at the way you expected them to. Then you play it again and again. Hours later, brushing your teeth, it comes back on its own. Everyone tells you to let it go. Nobody ever tells you why your mind refuses to. Stay with me, because your mind is not doing this to punish you. Replaying conversations usually gets filed under anxiety. Overthinking, a bad habit you should break. But there is a reason this happens after social moments and almost never after you fold laundry alone. What you experience as torture, your brain is running as a safety check. Today we're going to look at what it is actually checking for. And once you see it, the replay tends to get quieter on its own. Start with what your mind chooses to review. You had a 40-minute conversation. You are not reviewing 40 minutes. You are reviewing about 11 seconds of it. The part where you sounded a little too eager. The part where you corrected someone and watched their face change. The part where you talked about yourself slightly too long and heard it happening while it was happening. Your mind does not replay the moments where you were fine. It replays the moments where you might have cost yourself something. That is not random. Random would be replaying the small talk about the weather. And it comes with a body. You wince a little. You might say the better version out loud to an empty car, the sentence you should have used, delivered perfectly now that nobody is there to hear it. This is a search, and it is searching one very specific place. There is a device on every commercial aircraft called a flight recorder, the black box. It does not run because anyone expects a crash. It runs so that if something ever goes slightly wrong, there is a version of events to go back to. You have one of those. It records every conversation you have, and it does not ask permission before it plays the tape back. Here's the part most people get wrong about it, though. The timing. It rarely happens during the conversation. During, you are functional. You laugh in the right places. You hold your side of it. It starts after. In the car. On the walk home. In the shower, 2 days later, for no reason at all. Psychologists have a name for this. Post-event processing. It comes out of the cognitive model of social anxiety developed by David Clark and Adrian Wells, and it describes exactly this window, the review that begins once the social event is already over. And what that research describes is a strange switch that flips. During the conversation, you were inside your own body. Afterward, you watch yourself from the outside, like a stranger reviewing footage of a person they have never met. Here is the flaw in that. When you review yourself from the outside, you do not have the other person's data. You only have your own feelings from the inside. So your discomfort becomes the evidence. You felt awkward, therefore you must have looked awkward. You have done that, right? Convicted yourself using the testimony of a witness who was already frightened, and the tape is not neutral either. Memory does not sit in storage untouched. Every time you pull a moment back up, you handle it and you put back a slightly edited copy, which means the 15th replay is not the conversation. It is a version of a version, sanded down toward whatever you were afraid of the first time. The awkward pause gets longer each round. Their expression gets colder. You are not remembering it more clearly. You are remembering it more harshly. But here is where it gets interesting. Think about a conversation you replayed for a week, and one you forgot within the hour. The difference between them is usually not how badly they went. It is whether they finished. Bluma Zygarnik, a psychologist working in the 1920s, noticed that waiters could recall the details of orders that had not been paid for yet, and lost those details almost immediately once the bill was settled. Unfinished things stay loaded in memory. Finished things get released. It became known as the Zygarnik effect. A conversation has two endings. The words end when somebody says goodnight. The verdict does not. Nobody stands at the door and tells you, "That went fine, you did not lose anything tonight, we are still good." So the file stays open. And an open file gets read again. That is why the replays cluster around ambiguity, not around obvious disasters. The friend who replied a little shorter than usual. The manager who said we'll talk about it later and then went quiet for 3 days. Or the message thread that just stopped midway, with your last text sitting there looking a little too long compared to theirs. Nothing bad happened in any of those. Nothing was resolved either. And your mind cannot file away a thing that has no ending. Your mind is not stuck on what went badly. It is stuck on what never got answered. But here's the part that explains everything. Why would a brain care this much about 11 seconds of talking? Because for most of human history, how other people saw you was not a question of self-esteem. It was a question of food, shelter, and who would notice if you did not come back. Being quietly downgraded in the eyes of your group was not embarrassing. It was dangerous. The psychologist Mark Leary proposed something called sociometer theory. The idea is that self-esteem works less like a measurement of your worth and more like a gauge on a dashboard. It is not tracking how good you are. It is tracking how secure your standing is with the people around you. And a gauge only earns its place on the dashboard if it moves before the engine. So when your stomach drops at 11 at night over a sentence you said at 2 in the afternoon, that is not irrationality. That is an old instrument doing precisely the job it was built for, inside a life that no longer punishes you for a badly worded joke. Your body still treats a slightly cool reply as a threat to your place in the group, because for the people you descended from, it was one. This is also why it hurts more with certain people. You do not lie awake replaying the exchange with the cashier. You replay conversations with people whose opinion of you decides where you belong. And if you grew up somewhere that a shift in someone's tone actually changed the rest of your evening, that gauge got calibrated early. Sensitive. Fast. Hard to switch off later, in rooms where a shift in tone means nothing at all. Nobody sits you down and adjusts an instrument like that. It just keeps reading the room you are in with the settings of the room you came from. And there is a piece of this that almost nobody says out loud. The other person barely recorded anything. Work on what psychologists call the spotlight effect. Much of it associated with the researcher Thomas Gilovich keeps finding the same gap. We badly overestimate how much other people notice about us. They were not studying your pause. They were running their own tape about their own 11 seconds. Sit with that for a moment. The conversation you have now reviewed 40 times exists, in that much detail, inside exactly one head. That does not make you foolish. It makes the trial you keep holding an unfair one. One witness, no defense, and a judge who is exhausted. Think about the last time somebody confessed to you that they had been mortified about something they said to you weeks ago. Did you remember it? Usually not even slightly. And you were in the room. That is what you look like, from the other side of your own conversations. Which brings up the difference that actually matters here. There is reviewing and there is replaying. Reviewing asks a question and accepts an answer. Was that unkind? A little. Then I'll say something tomorrow. File closed. Replaying asks the same question and refuses every answer it gets, because it is not looking for information anymore. It is looking for a guarantee that you are still safe with that person, and no amount of tape will ever produce a guarantee. That is the whole trap. You are asking a recording of the past to promise you something about the future of a relationship, and a recording cannot do that. It can only tell you what was said. So the loop runs, not because you are weak-willed, and not because you failed to try hard enough to stop. It runs because it has been given a question it was never designed to answer, and it will not quit on an assignment. So let me say the part you have probably needed to hear for a long time. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not obsessive. You are not too much. You are not the only person in the room who cannot simply let things go, though it has felt that way for years. You are someone with an unusually good recorder and no procedure for closing the file. And look at what that recorder actually gives you. You are the one who remembers the tone somebody used, who catches the second a friend goes quiet at the table, who circles back the next day and asks if everything is okay, and is usually right. People who never replay conversations also rarely notice when they have hurt someone. You notice, it is the same instrument doing both jobs. The black box was never the problem. The black box is the reason you are careful with people, and being careful with people is not a small thing to be. The problem is that nobody ever taught you how to close the investigation, that the tape can be listened to once honestly, and then set down that the absence of a verdict is not a guilty verdict. Most of the conversations you have replayed for years ended perfectly fine. You just never got told so. So tell me, if there is one sentence your mind keeps coming back to, leave it in the comments, or just write "still replaying" if you would rather not spell it out. I read them, and I would guess a lot of people are about to find their own line inside yours. Tonight, if the tape starts up again, try something small. Listen once. Ask what you would honestly change. Then say the sentence nobody said to you at the door. We are fine. Then let the file close. Subscribe to keep decoding yourself, and I'll see you in the next.